Lanya from Security Title with an important warning. Wire fraud is real, and home buyers and sellers are one of the biggest targets, even on Guam. When sending money by wire transfer, be sure to confirm the wire instructions by phone, not email. In this case, it's good to be suspicious and know who you're dealing with. Let the professionals at Security Title work with you to minimize loss due to wire fraud. We are here to help.
The vaccine is officially here, and we aren't just talking about the COVID vaccine, but a financial vaccine at Bank Pacific. We may not be doctors, but we can help you with your financial health. Whether to take advantage of today's crazy low rates, or just a local bank that has your back. At Bank Pacific, we want to help make 2021 your best year yet. Because for 66 years, where others put branches, we place roots, and we're rooting for you. Equal housing lender, member FDIC.
Prosecutors in Houston say a doctor stole doses of the COVID vaccine from a damaged vial and administered them to friends and family.
Dr. Hassan Gokal denies wrongdoing, saying he wanted to make sure COVID-19 dosages that would have expired didn't go to waste. Harris County prosecutors disagree, saying Gokal stole a punctured vial from a vaccination site in December and abused his position by letting family and friends cut in line. Authorities say the 48-year-old ignored county health department rules requiring punctured vials with viable doses to be brought to the main office to be administered to at-risk frontline workers. The department fired Gokal after an internal investigation. He faces up to a year in jail and a $4,000 fine if convicted of misdemeanor theft by a public servant. Steve Rappaport, Fox News.
A Florida man accused of helping storm the Capitol and then returning to D.C. for President Biden's inauguration will have to stay behind bars. A judge denying bail Thursday for 26-year-old Samuel Camargo, saying his actions created too much risk that he would not appear for trial. President Biden's pledge to end gun violence is upsetting gun rights advocates.
President Biden's plan to rewrite America's gun laws makes gun owners nervous. State Rep Leo Basucci wants to make Arizona a Second Amendment sanctuary state, banning the use of state money or manpower to enforce any federal law or regulation that violates the right to bear arms.
This bill is saying they can do what they want in D.C., but we're not going to have our law enforcement spend resources to help them arrest law-abiding citizens who are gun owners. 4 states and more than 400 mostly red cities and towns passed measures declaring themselves gun sanctuaries, modeled after blue state rules that protect illegal immigrants from federal law.
Fox's William LaJeunesse. And I'm Carmen Roberts, and this is Fox News.
Rolling sound, quiet, and action.
The Ray Gibson Show, starring Senator Mona Silva Tyron as the news anchor.
I'm Mona Silva Tyron, and I'll have your local news every morning. Life moves pretty fast, so stay with us to stay informed right here on The Point.
Also starring Jerry Roberts as the Better Business Training Guru.
Get out there and do something good today, like listen to us Monday through Friday, 6 to 10 a.m., where we go extra for you.
Produced by the real Joe Cruz. And your warm and intelligent host, Ray Gibson.
It's the Gibson Stream of Consciousness. All the players and all the games with cameos and calls from the most interesting people like you. We'll see and hear you right here on your talk radio superstation. This is The Point.
The Ray Gibson Show was filmed before a live Facebook audience.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
We buy a homeowner's policy and never give it another thought until something happens. Life brings changes, and our coverage needs can change. The smart thing to do is get the answers and level up our insurance to make sure we're totally protected.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
Talk Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Mezcla. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro and Mezcla Dos are open for takeout and delivery services. More details, call the Hagåtña location at 479-2652 or Mezcla Dos Upper Tumon at 646-6295. Get your Mezcla fix at the comfort of your home.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie. The only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Not today, not tomorrow, not Sunday, not Monday, even if Joe Biden is president. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That's what Tall Tales stands for. We'll continue to advocate it. Starting off today, as usual, we have some boilerplate from the Daily News. I'm going to spend a little time with it because, as usual, it needs a substantial amount of rebuttal. And it's titled Another View. Instead of Democrat number 1, it's Democrat number 2. This is from Matthew Dowd, ABC's chief political analyst. Well, that'll be the Democrat view. Billy Shore is founder and executive chair of Share Our Strength. Alan Kazay is co-founder of City Year. Michelle Nunn is president and CEO of Care USA. Rosabeth Moss Cantor is the Ernest L. Arbuckle Professor of Business at Harvard. Elisa Bassnight is a member of the New Politics Advisory. Man, I suppose they divided it up and each one would write a paragraph and then hand the pen to the next one.
Surprisingly, they all wrote the same exact thing.
Isn't it? Yeah, so this is what they start. This is what they say. Our country requires leaders who recognize our responsibility. There's more that unites us than divides us. Americans have heard this refrain countless times over the years, but not anymore. As the gulf of mistrust between left and right continues to widen and our common threads fray, it raises the question, what is exactly the more that unites us? The violent insurrection, okay, there you go, at the Capitol this month made stark for people across the country and around the globe American democracy and the principles that undergird it, equality. Now, the first word they mention is equality. Equality can mean two different things to two different groups. To me, equality means equality before the law. Equality in such a manner that everyone has an equal opportunity to succeed. And your success depends in a large part on the efforts you put in. That's not what equality means to the left. Equality means to the left, everybody should have as much of everything else as everybody else does. So I'll go to an example that we had just the other day, ice hockey. A game I played when I was a youngster. Yeah, back in my hometown, we had an ice pond right behind the school. We'd make a couple of not real goals. We'd put a couple of snowballs out on the ice. Every kid had a hockey stick and a puck, and we'd go over there and we'd play hockey. We weren't very good at it, but we did it anyhow. But I mentioned the other day that there are no black hockey players, that there are a fair number of Swedish hockey players, people born in Sweden who are playing hockey in the United States and Canada. And there are far more Canadians playing ice hockey than Americans. So this looks like a job for the Democrats. You know, because the people that are playing hockey don't look like the rest of us. So there should be as many black hockey players as there are white hockey players. Now, the fact that a lot of hockey players come from a foreign country, that's great. That's kind of the way we do it. I suppose the Democrat approach to it would be to say, we need to see if we could get some hockey players from Latin America. And the Democrat approach to things would be that unless the demographics of ice hockey reflect the demographics of the United States, There's only one answer. There's only one reason that could be systemic racism. The American system is designed to keep BIPOCs, black, indigenous, people of color, from playing professional hockey, which is just a bunch of hockey itself. And the reason that, the Canadians play hockey is because it's so cold in Canada. And there's a lot of ice in Canada. Same with Sweden. And that's why there are more hockey players from Canada than there are from the United States. Hockey, I lived in Miami at one time. Ice hockey was not a very popular sport in Miami. I think that was perhaps a shortcoming of the school system, that they didn't really allow kids to prosper in what they might have been really good at. Anyhow, the word equality, you always got to watch out when you see the word equality, because it can mean two almost completely different things. But they're saying here, American democracy and the principles that undergird it: equality, justice. The same way with justice. Now, I saw a post the other day here. I didn't want to make a big issue of it at the time, but the post was that Piolo never got justice. What was his first name? Was it Albert?
I can't remember. That's the officer who was shot.
Who was shot? Yeah, he was. The allegation was that Mark Torrey killed him. Right? Mark Torrey was found not guilty. So, did Albert Piolo receive justice? And I'm going to say yes, Albert Piolo received justice. He was killed. The person that allegedly killed him was arrested, detained, finally released under some serious conditions, brought to trial. In fact, 2 trials, 2 jury trials, and the jury found him not guilty at the second time around. That is justice. Now, if you say that Piolo didn't get justice, you got to prove one more thing here. When you say that he didn't get justice, that's got to mean more than, I didn't like the result. I think the guy was guilty. The only way that you can make an argument that Piolo didn't get justice if you find some illegal conduct on the part of someone that had something to do with the trial. That John Gotti came back from the dead and paid off some of the jurors like he did during his career, or that the judge was corrupt, or that a police officer committed perjury in order to get Piolo off. Then if you can prove that up, then you can say he didn't get justice. But if he went through the regular trial procedure, if Torrey went through the regular trial procedures and the jury found him not guilty, under our system, that is justice, even though you don't like the result. That isn't the system of justice that the Democrats like. And we saw that go on all summer long. When a white police officer shoots a black person, the only possible just result is that the white officer be sent to the gas chamber or the electric chair or whatever. Anything other than that is not justice. And that the only way to achieve justice after a verdict like that is to burn the town down. That's justice. No justice, no peace. So when Democrats start talking about equality, the things that hold us together, equality, justice, liberty, our liberty is right on the edge right now. We're at a point where if you don't practice the requisite amount of pretending in your daily life, one of your fundamental liberties, that is to earn a living, could be taken away from you. If you can't pretend that a man can become a woman, if you can't pretend that 2 men can get married, your life in a lot of parts of the country, your career is over, because you must engage in this enforced form of pretending. Otherwise, you're going to be canceled. liberty ought to mean that you could advance whatever opinion is appropriate, even if it's unpopular, and not be punished for it. And then they go on to say, liberty for all, a government of, by, and for the people, so long as they fit in the right identity groups. That's by the people. It's not just you go out and you pick the best people to do the jobs and put them in the jobs. You have to have so many of this and so many of that. Joe Biden, I think, really set the tone when he showed us how he was going to pick his vice president. I'm going to choose a woman to be vice president. A couple of weeks later, it's going to be a black woman. This is what we call the land of opportunity. So that's what they're starting off this editorial here with. Is the tenets that have held our republic together for nearly 2.5 centuries are neither certain nor guaranteed, nor is your rendition of them correct. They are fragile and must be defended by every generation. It also made clear something we've long believed, that the key to preserving and restoring and revitalizing American democracy is through servant leadership. That's a real buzzword from about, 15 years ago? Servant leadership. We even make kids go out now before they graduate from high school and do some kind of a service project. The fact that they can't read doesn't make any difference if they're doing a service project. The type of leadership that willingly surrenders the me for the we, and that sees itself as a steward. Leadership that consistently aims to foster civic unity and that never loses sight of its North Star, accountability. They're just describing Joe Biden here, right? Until now, the aforementioned more was largely built around the stories and myths we told ourselves. Now here comes your critical race theory. The stories and myths we told ourselves, that America was the world's melting pot and the land of opportunity. This was a myth. A country of destiny, seemingly impervious to history or human nature, and exempt from the threat of despotism or decline to which others have succumbed. The shining city on a hill. It was that, up until Barack Obama came along. If the discord of 2020 taught us anything, it's that these stories mean vastly different things to different people. And where we go from here will largely depend on our ability to find a renewed understanding of our American identity. Our collective way forward will rely on a new narrative, which they happen to have handy, around what it truly means to be American. As the mayhem unfolded at the Capitol, servant leaders from both sides of the aisle gave us a glimpse of what that narrative could be. Folks like Representative Jason Crow, Democrat from Colorado, Representative Elisa Slotkin, Democrat from Michigan, Representative Peter Major, Republican from Michigan, whose instincts were to look beyond their own sense of safety or self-interest. They shielded colleagues from imminent threat of physical danger, and through their words and actions defended our government from what would be insurrectionists, demonstrating to the world what it means to serve with courage and integrity. These are the individuals forging this new narrative. Women and men who once served their communities and country in the military, or through national service organizations entering the political arena, unless it happens to be National Guard. Then they can't be trusted. And so on. Our country requires leaders who recognize that what unites us is our shared responsibility as citizens is to act both beneficiaries and guardians of this 244-year-old experiment. American democracy is fragile. It requires public servants who are committed to common good. It requires leaders who see themselves not as members of a tribe, but as parts of a whole. Yeah, well, I just happened to stumble across this. I thought it was appropriate. 18 United States Code, Section 2102, definitions, and it defines riot, incite a riot, etc. And in subsection B, riot shall not be deemed to mean the mere oral or written advocacy of ideas or expression of belief not involving advocacy of any acts of violence or assertion of the rightness of or the right to commit any such acts. So you can talk about it so long as you don't say, you need to do this now. And that's not what Trump said, notwithstanding the view from Thailand. Okay, so much for the daily news. A little bit of left-wing propaganda here. At least the Daily News was able to overcome the desire that so many of the mainstream media have, which was to slobber all over the Biden administration. Unfortunately, the Post wasn't able to do that. Hoping the Biden administration will focus on matters of survival. This is what the Post said. Now that the inauguration for President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris is over, their test as the nation's highest elected officials who inherited the economic and health crisis caused by Wuhan virus begins. The modesty and grace that the Biden-Harris administration has projected in the campaign. Come on, man. The modesty and grace that the Biden-Harris administration has projected in the campaign, modesty and grace, have given tens of millions of Americans, including many of us here in faraway Guam, hope that this presidency is one that knows how to use the gift of stillness. Stillness allows our national and government Guam leaders a chance to reflect and see the challenges we face more clearly. That gift will help keep them from getting distracted by the kind of noise and negativity that the president that just ended distracted itself with. Yeah, stillness. You know, like Graceful Joe cutting 15 executive orders on the first day in office to turn back some of the things, many of the things that Trump did. That's stillness. And then the Post has got to launch into a little Trump bashing here. That gift will help keep them from getting distracted by the kind of noise and negativity that the presidency that just ended distracted itself with. The end of the Trump presidency that put the nation's democracy at risk will hopefully no longer cloud the vision of the nation's leaders, or at least those who truly want to take us from the depths of economic despair and the continuing Wuhan virus crisis that have shaken our sense of security. Out of the many words spoken by President Biden, we picked some that we would like to share. Here's the first one they would like to share. Come on, man. We need to see hope in our leadership, both in the nation and locally, that we'll get through this economic and health crisis without having to lose much more than we already have. Quote, "This is democracy's day. Today we celebrate the triumph not of a candidate, but of a cause, the cause of democracy. The people, the will of the people has been heard, and the will of the people has been heeded," Biden stated in part. "For us on Guam, our struggles will continue in the foreseeable future, and a lot is riding on the success of the Biden-Harris administration's future efforts, and enough of their solutions will be impactful for us here on Guam or end up too little too late. We face the uncertainty of our tourism industry's recovery from near total collapse. This industry used to be the provider of jobs to more than 20,000 Guamanians, thanks to the more than 1.5 million tourists who visited each year before the pandemic has collapsed, and full recovery isn't happening this year. Instead of 1.5 million visitors arriving this fiscal year, The projection from the Guam Visitors Bureau is that only 80,000 tourists will make it this time in a 12-month time frame. That used to be the total arrivals we would have normally seen in 2 or 3 weeks. The struggle to keep us from falling from a financial cliff and the struggle to meet the needs of our families in a time when thousands of us no longer have jobs or business will continue for months, maybe even more than a year. The Biden administration's next step will be key to helping Guam residents. The $1.9 trillion pandemic relief package that was enacted into law recently will not be enough. Workers who are trying to survive with leaner, we know all of this. Unity, regardless of the political divide, was a big part of the new president's speech. Right.
Okay.
Yeah. But as important as the healing the rift of our nation has gone through in the last 4 years will be the new president and vice president's resolve, along with that with congressional leaders, to focus on matters that will help people rebuild their economic lives and keep them healthy. Yes, there will be a lot of problems this new presidency will try to solve. We can only hope they know that the priority should first be the issues that have to do with survival. Many people fear for the future, not because of political differences, but because of struggles at home. Struggles such as where to get the money for the next bills, etc. Look, I understand that many of my fellow Americans view the future with fear and trepidation. I understand they worry about their jobs. I understand. Like my dad, they lay in bed at night staring at the ceiling wondering, can I keep my health care? Can I pay my mortgage? Thinking about their families. What comes next? I promise you. I get it, Biden said. The guy's got a mind like a steel trap. It's good to hear Biden acknowledge the core issues many Americans face and that they're certain to meeting the basic needs in one's household. We also hope the Biden administration will include Guam in these problem-solving efforts. Without federal assistance, Guamanians are in for a very tough time for survival unless they're able to separate from the United States and call their own shots. Yeah. Our local government officials' solution to the current pandemic-related disaster has been to look elsewhere to the federal government to continue to pump cash into Guam. Our hope for the Biden administration to come through is not a matter of choice. It's because, absent real meaningful solutions at the local level, it's the only thing we can hope for. Well, they finally got down to a serious editorial in the last page. Joe Biden is not what you're saying he is. You know, look at his record.
There's 47 years worth of it.
Yeah, there's a long record to look at. And then I wonder, I think I put this in the program notes. I wonder if if they're practicing Mokita in the nation's capital, because let me see here. Yeah. The Washington Post got through with the program giving Biden credit for not waiting. Let me start over. This is an article from Political. How about a little sobriety, please? At a time when large portions of the country think mainstream media is a tool of the left, perhaps it's time to tone down the Biden adulation. Let me take a short break here.
You heard of double mile credit card rewards? You can forget all about that. At First Hawaiian Bank, we're stepping it up. Not one, not two, not three, not even 4 times. You guessed it. First Hawaiian Bank is giving you 5 times the miles. Use your First Hawaiian Bank credit card and get rewarded 5 miles for every dollar spent with qualifying purchases at grocery stores. Plus 20,000 bonus miles. Learn more at any First Hawaiian Bank branch or go to FHB.com to apply today. First Hawaiian Bank. Equal housing lender, member FDIC.
Chili's has a dinner deal you can't miss. Enjoy a tasty appetizer, 2 bottomless Coca-Cola beverages, and 2 mouth-watering entrees, all for just $35. Treat yourself to entree options like our fall-off-the-bone baby back ribs, personal fajita with chicken, or the ultimate bacon burger. Chili's, 2 for $35. Available daily from 3 p.m. to closing for patio dining or takeout. Chili's is located on the 2nd floor of the Tuman Sands Plaza. Call 648-7377 to place your takeout order today. With Chili's, you can still savor the moment at home.
Now, more Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie. Spitting truth like watermelon seeds at a summer picnic. Call now, 888-TALK, 888-8255.
Yeah, so this is an article from Political. The Washington Post got with the program, giving Biden credit for not waiting long to begin staffing up his administration, swearing in top White House aides. Hey, way to go, Joe. As if previous incoming presidents had dilly-dallied about taking the reins. The New York Times swallowed whole the recent myth-making that has transformed Biden from a shifty politician into a statesman, conveying his call for civility and unity and portraying him as a disciplined, restrained character, when anyone who has studied his career knows he's anything but that. Just look at some of the silly things he said back on the campaign, calling that guy, what was it, a dog-faced pony soldier or something, 3 or 4 times. Yeah, everyone can appreciate that the coverage was minted at the Hollywood, as you were at the honeymoon, press works, journalists fire up for most new presidents. So in that sense, the outburst came as no surprise. For one thing, he isn't Donald Trump, and that carries him a long way in the media precincts. Also, the reporters and analysts crave something akin to normality, somebody who understands the English language, after witnessing the January 6th siege on the same steps, as they kept saying, where rioters had just gone hand-to-hand with police, and the swearing in of a female vice president who hailed from African and South American diasporas gave the occasion a genuine and deserved boost. But this doesn't excuse the rhetorical overkill that the press flung profligately. CNN's Jake Tapper, a normally sober commentator and reporter, was so moved by the Biden-Harris visit to the Tomb of the Unknowns after the investiture that he helped himself to a little play-by-play inside the new president's head. I cannot imagine that President Biden was not thinking of his favorite soldier, Beau Biden, his son, who died of cancer, who was a major in the Army Reserve, and for whom he mourns greatly. Tapper intoned, please, can we have a brief moratorium on future Beau Biden references unless absolutely necessary? But I suppose we got to talk more about Beau since we're not talking about Hunter at all, right?
Oh, boy.
Yeah. On his Twitter feed, CNN guy Brian Stelter actually complained that the Gas House gang at Fox News Channel were killjoying the happy day with criticisms of the coverage. Freed from his previous self-assignment to defend Trump's lurching madness, the network's Greg Gutfeld took aim at his competitors for their lapdoggery. As the corporate press drools for Joe, they frantically spit on President Trump, the outgoing guy, trying to outdo each other on who's more relieved that our national nightmare is over, Gutfeld said on Wednesday, making himself one of the blind hogs who found a truffle.
Gutfeld is awesome.
He is, yeah. I got to read that again. Making himself one of the blind hogs who found a truffle. Now, truffles are mushrooms.
Yes.
And they grow as deep as 3 feet underground, and the buds of those truffles are really good eating, but they're hard to find. But there are certain and they do this in France. Maybe Frenchie will fill us in a little later on. Hogs are really good at finding truffles.
Yes, they are.
So there are hogs that are trained to go out and find truffles. So this is a great phrase. Gutfeld said on Wednesday, they quoted Gutfeld saying, as the corporate press drooled for Joe, they frantically spit on President Trump, the outgoing guy trying to outdo each other on who's more relieved that our national nightmare is over. Gutfeld said on Wednesday, making himself one of the blind hogs who found a truffle. Yeah, it's, you know, I have to, when I read the mainstream media's account of the new Harris-Biden administration, I almost have to take an emetic. You know, if you eat something that's just really, really too sweet, it can make you throw up. And that's exactly what I'm seeing. Okay, I got something else here I was going to do today. Some wisdom. I think I started this on Wednesday. Wisdom. As an example, the only mystery in life is why the kamikaze pilots wore helmets. And Albert Einstein tells us the difference between stupidity and genius is that genius has its limits. Ambrose Bierce. You remember Ambrose Bierce?
Horror writer.
Yeah. An occurrence at an Old Creek Bridge.
Oh, that was awesome.
Great writing. And this is what Ambrose says, Ambrose Bierce. War is God's way of teaching Americans geography.
Yikes.
Yeah. It would be nice to spend billions on schools and roads, but right now that money is desperately needed for political ads. That was last week, right? And this is one I'm going to adopt for Tall Tales. This is from someone named Ashley Brilliant. And Ashley is indeed brilliant. And she says, my opinions may have changed, but not the fact that I'm right. I think, see if I, tulaka estigigi fino tomorrow na, sa be usagi para idzoku madu, no? My opinions may have changed, but not the fact that I'm right. Yeah, and have you noticed that all the people in favor of birth control are already born? The surest sign that intelligent life exists elsewhere in the universe is that it has never tried to contact us. As a child, my family's menu consisted of 2 choices. This is from Buddy Hackett. As a child, my family's menu consisted of 2 choices, take it or leave it. My favorite machine at the gym is the vending machine. All right, everyone. This is Casey Stengel. All right, and Casey had a case of Yogi Berra when it came to expressing himself. All right, everyone, line up alphabetically according to your height. Dave Barry, never under any circumstances take a sleeping pill and a laxative on the same night.
Oops.
This is wisdom. The duty of a patriot is to protect his country. The duty of a patriot is to protect his country from its government. How many people have telekinetic powers? Raise my hand.
Nice.
If you live to be 100, you've got it made. Very few people die past that age. Okay, so much for wisdom. Let's turn now to the card. Let's see here. Okay, before I go into the card, I guess Mark Cruz wants to comment on Zemi Kodny, huh, Jose? Yeah, okay. Well, let me pick up Mark Cruz before I plunge into the card. You want to make your mark, right, Mark?
Yes, I do, Your Honor. That guy Thailand had me thinking yesterday, and I had read the transcript, but I hadn't watched the video.
Well,
so I actually had to do some serious digging to find an actual unedited video of the speech. It's not that easy to find. You've got to actually hunt for it, because I couldn't find where he incited the riot.
Yeah.
Alleged riot. And then I went back and I found where the Democrats were using the words "walk down to the Capitol," and if you really read it, it says "walk down to the Capitol," and I think it says something to the effect of "we're going to walk down to the Capitol. We're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women." Okay, where does it say anything there about trying to invade the Capitol? It doesn't.
Exactly, Mark.
So, yeah, and so I thought maybe, okay, you know what, the transcript was read wrong. So I went and watched the video, and no, the transcript was correct. So, I mean, your buddy Thailand, and I use that term loosely, he's going to have to call you back in and really come up, do some magic to figure out how they got from one point to the other. But then again, they did it in Richmond with there are good people on both sides by just editing out everything else he said and just trying to key on that. And once if you repeat a lie long enough, then it allegedly becomes truth, according to mainstream media. And one of the jokes that you missed was there are no atheists in foxholes.
I don't think that's a joke. I think that's a true story. Yeah.
Okay, you're right. Okay.
So, Mark, according to my friend, Thailand, I am not qualified to speak on what Trump said before the incursion at the Capitol because I didn't watch the speech. If you didn't watch it, you can't talk. Now, if you read the transcript, that doesn't count either. But if you watch the speech, then you can speak with authority on it. But you didn't rebut a couple of his other points. One of his other points was that for 2 months before January 6th, Trump has been saying that the election had been stolen.
Right.
Yeah, no, this is really important. I mean, of course, if you do a nickel's worth of scholarship on inciting a riot, you can't incite a riot on Saturday with something that you said on Wednesday. It's got to be contemporaneously with what happens. But
exactly.
Yeah, but anyhow, I think it's always clear when someone is using his talking points to advance a point that he isn't really that familiar with himself, but has strong emotions about. And that's how I would characterize Mr. Thailand.
Yeah, well, someone, the caller right after him said the same thing. He was reading from a script.
Yeah. Okay,
all right.
You made your mark today.
Yeah, hey, one more.
Yeah.
When the pin is pulled, Mr. Grenade is no one's friend.
Okay. That's a good point. Yeah.
All right. We'll talk to you later. Bye.
Thank you, Mark. Yeah, there's a caller that made his mark. Okay, plunging into the card for today, starting out with the program notes. I guess I'll take a break first, huh? Yeah.
Want to win $100? Join the Guam Visitors Bureau's Protect Guam campaign series to show how you're helping our island in the fight against COVID-19. There are 2 ways to win. Upload your photos or videos to visitguam.com or share on social media how you're wearing your mask, showcasing Guam heroes, or staying active and healthy with the Protect Guam hashtag. Don't forget to download the Guam COVID Alert app. Let's protect and support each other through these tough times. For a chance to win $100, check out visitguam.com.
Okay, Google. Hey, Siri. Hi, Bixby.
Go ahead. I'm listening.
Open the Point app. Opening.
Live stream, on demand, swap stations. Check out the visual radio. Get the free app available on the App Store and Google Play, or go to thepoint.gu.
Okay, so here we are, just a few more minutes before the big halftime show, and I've got my program notes, which I mention every day. You can find on Tall Tales, along with today's card. And when the show's over, you can go to Tall Tales, take a look at the show again to see if I answered the questions the same way the second time that I did the first time. Post your pithy comments in the comment section on Tall Tales. Communicate, on the comment section on Jungle Watch. Communicate with the Jungle Watch worldwide audience, and report back to me what results you got. Okay, program notes. Joanne Brown seems to have flushed out some potential targets for her anti-corruption campaign. That's the first item on the card. Brown versus Respicio and Tenorio? Question mark. And then the next one, we've got the governor versus Judge Iriarte and Tom Pinehoff in a couple of court cases. And then we've got cancel culture versus lawyers and BLM versus white coats, etc. Some old stuff there. Starting out with Brown versus Respicio and Tenorio. So you'll recall that we had a story a couple of days ago based on something that ran in KOAM where a convicted former corrections officer, Frankie Rosalind, is now working at the Port Authority. And according to Rory Respicio, the manager of the port, the hiring of Rosalind, who had been convicted of official misconduct when he was a corrections officer because he got caught up with the drug dealers in the prison, inmates and officers. This is what Rory Respicio said about hiring Rosalind. It was merit-based. That's another situation where I struggle with. Do you hold someone's past against them to the point where you're going to keep on holding them down? Respicio admitted he submitted an application, he qualified for the job, he interviewed, and then the selection was made. Rosalind was part of the 2017 DOC contraband scandal. He and several others were arrested that year and charged in a scheme to smuggle drugs into the Manilo compound. The Guam, the Guam Attorney General's office said that there's no rule or law prohibiting people who have been convicted of official misconduct to be government employees. And Rory said, well, it was merit-based. Now, when you say, yes, I hired someone who was convicted of official misconduct, and the first words out of your mouth are, it was merit-based. If I were a counselor at one of the high schools or at GCC and someone said, sir, I'd like to get a job working at the port of Guam. What should I do in order to increase my chances? First thing you do is you need to go out and be convicted of official misconduct. because this is a merit factor at the port. It was merit-based. Yeah, did he have any particular qualifying? Yeah, he'd been convicted of official misconduct in some drug dealing at the prison. So, it's the old saying, you need a thief to catch a thief. So he'll be right on top of drug dealers at the port. So that's what Rory said. And as I went through this yesterday, Rory kind of acted like he had nothing to do with it. Well, he submitted an application, he qualified, he was interviewed, and the selection was made. The passive voice can be a really good instrument if you know how and when to use it. Consider that sentence if it had read like this. He submitted an application, he qualified for the job, he interviewed, and then I selected him, which is what happened, as I explained the other day. No, the selection was made. So, and then the merciful side of Rory, do we want to hold him down for his whole life because of one mistake he made? Yeah, so based on that, Joanne Brown introduced Bill 37-36. And Bill 37-36 says that no one who's convicted of official misconduct can work for the government of Guam anywhere at any time, which seems to me quite appropriate. If let's examine some possibilities, okay? Let's say that a person is 18 years old, or let's say he's 21 years old, and he's hanging out at some gin mill downtown after Tom Pinehoff is rescued, and he gets into a scuffle with someone over somebody's girlfriend, and there's a fight, and the 21-year-old, is more aggressive than he should be, so he's convicted of a crime. And let's say he's convicted, he does some probation, etc., and he goes on about his way. And 10 years later, he applies for a job at the port as a mechanic or something like that. Would he be a good risk? Yeah, maybe, The words moral turpitude come in here. It's a word that everybody throws around and only I know the definition of. Turpitude means a twisting. That's what turpitude means. And moral doesn't mean, no adultery or something like that. It's a conforming with the standard of conduct expected in a particular community. So a crime involving moral, in order for a crime to involve moral turpitude, it has to encompass a dishonest state of mind. Losing your temper and taking a swing at somebody who insults your girlfriend is not moral turpitude. It's not something that's going to get you a gold star, but it's not moral turpitude. Going outside and trashing that guy's car, yeah, then you got something there. Stealing his car for sure. Is there any question that official misconduct when it deals with drug dealing in the prison is a crime of moral turpitude? Does that guy deserve the same consideration for another chance as someone who committed a crime in what is referred to as the heat of passion? No, not even close, Rory. So, Rory, if you hired this guy, I don't know why you hired him, but my suspicion gland is working overtime. I suspect that you hired him for reasons that you don't want to hear about on KUAM, but might even though you don't want to. So the next thing then is the lieutenant governor weighs in. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. KUAM. Tenorio says he played no role in Frankie Rosalind's port hiring. The controversial case of former Department of Corrections officer Frankie Rosalind has been brought to light into the light yet again after it was confirmed he is currently working as a program coordinator too at the Port Authority. In August of 2019, Rosalind pled guilty to official misconduct as a misdemeanor for his role in the 2017 DOC drug conspiracy case. In addition, Rosalind is also in a relationship with the sister of Lieutenant Governor Josh Tenorio, who made it clear that he had no part in Rosalind's new position at the port.
Did he volunteer this statement, or did somebody ask him to?
I think TKUM. No, wait a minute. He went on that morning show.
So he volunteered the information.
He volunteered the information. Yeah.
Interesting.
I can't quote you chapter and verse of the Shakespearean play, but there's a famous line, "Methinks the lady dost protest too much." Yeah.
Exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah. So is our lieutenant governor trying to get ahead of the story here? Is that what he's trying? Benny Rosalind, I see nothing. I hear nothing. I know nothing. My name is Schultz, not Tenorio. Yeah. And then here's a quote. I did not have a role in the hiring. And if you know our family, I never even had a conversation with Frankie about this case. The only things I ever talked to him about is expressing some sorrow for what it's done to the family and then relief when it was done. I didn't even know he applied for a job until he already had an interview. Yeah. Hello, Kunyao? Yeah. Si Frankie Estine, Guaha Idzoku interview Nigap Nai, Kusina Naizu Aduda. Let me see what I can do, Frankie. So apparently after the interview, he tells Josh, hey, I interviewed for a job at the port. Yeah, okay, well, let's take a short break here. Well, let's take a long break for the halftime show, and we'll come back to the Lieutenant Governor and Frankie Rosalind.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
A proposal to delay the impeachment trial. I'm Carmen Roberts, Fox News. Republican Senator Mitch McConnell, now minority leader, wants the Senate to delay the impeachment trial for former President Trump.
McConnell suggests the House hold on to a single article of impeachment against President Trump until next week and then give the former president and House managers serving as prosecutors 2 weeks to prepare. That would set up a trial for the week of February 14th. It would also allow the Senate to continue working full-time on confirming President Biden's cabinet nominees and advance other legislation. A spokesperson for Majority Leader Chuck Schumer says they received the proposal and will review it.
Fox's Jared Halpern. Meantime, President Biden is moving full speed ahead with his new administration, already signing 27 executive orders or actions since taking office Wednesday.
Aimed at ramping up COVID-19 testing and vaccinations, tightening workplace safety rules, and funneling more federal dollars to states struggling through the pandemic. And unlike during the Trump administration, not a single GOP-led lawsuit to slow him down. Still, Democrats are worried that the executive orders are the equivalent of slow walking the change the country desperately needs.
Fox's Kevin Cork. President Biden is also moving quickly to restore America's participation in world affairs. In addition to rejoining the Paris Climate Accord, the president's recommitting the U.S. to the UN's World Health Organization, or WHO. Republican Congressman Michael McCall of Texas tells Fox News he supports that plan.
We need to have greater influence within the United Nations, particularly WHO. So I would argue that we should continue to engage with them. However, we should force through our funding mechanisms to call for the resignation of Director General Tedros.
America's listening to Fox News.
Half a day. This is Clara Manglona from Security Title with an important warning. Wire fraud is real, and home buyers and sellers are one of the biggest targets, even on Guam. When sending money by wire transfer, be sure to confirm the wire instructions by phone, not email. In this case, it's good to be suspicious and know who you're dealing with. Let the professionals at Security Title work with you to minimize loss due to wire fraud. We are here to help.
The vaccine is officially here, and we aren't just talking about the COVID vaccine, but a financial vaccine at Bank Pacific. We may not be doctors, but we can help you with your financial health. Whether to take advantage of today's crazy low rates, or just a local bank that has your back. At Bank Pacific, we want to help make 2021 your best year yet. Because for 66 years, where others put branches, we place roots, and we're rooting for you. Equal housing lender, member FDIC.
A Washington state man accused of a coronavirus vaccine scam is under arrest.
Federal prosecutors say Johnny Stein tried to pass himself off as a biotech expert, claiming to be the founder and president of North Coast Biologics. As early as March, Stein is accused of posting offers on social media to inject customers with a COVID vaccine for a charge of $400 to $1,000. This despite the fact he received a cease and desist decree from the state attorney general. U.S. Attorney Brian Moran says Stein was injecting people with an unknown substance, claiming it was a vaccine. Tom Rigotti, Fox News.
Investigators are trying to determine what caused a National Guard helicopter to crash Wednesday night in upstate New York, killing the 3 Guard members on board.
The Monroe County Sheriff's Office quickly moved to secure the crash site for Army investigators.
We've applied several resources to this effort. Our patrol deputies, our supervisors, our command staff, all hands on deck for this.
Chief Deputy Michael Fowler says area residents paid tribute to the fallen troops as their remains were escorted to the medical examiner's office.
They came out of their homes. They stood on the side of the road with flags, saluting.
Steve Rappaport, Fox News.
ICE is claiming responsibility for the twin Baghdad bombings that killed at least 32 people on Thursday. And a baseball team from the past that produced legends of the game is making a comeback.
The Kansas City T-Bones, an independent baseball team in the American Association, is bringing back a historical moniker, changing their name to the Kansas City Monarchs to pay tribute to the iconic Negro Leagues ball club. The Negro Leagues Baseball Museum signed a licensing agreement with the owners of the minor league team to honor the original Monarchs who won the first Negro League World Series back in 1924. Matt Napolitano, Fox News.
And I'm Carmen Roberts, and this is Fox News.
Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Hagåtña and Mezcla Dos Upper Tumon are now open for takeout and delivery services. For more information, call now at 479-2652 or 3 or Mezcla Dos at 646-6295. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro brings you island hospitality with the true taste of modern Chamorro cuisine at the comfort of your own home. They take your local favorite dishes and serve them with extra flair you will only find at Mezcla. Mezcla, a true taste of Guam.
Half a day. This is Michelle from APL Guam. Here at APL, our expertise and extensive network can help you grow your business and reach out to more markets. As a responsible carrier, APL is also committed to a sustainable future, whether it's protecting the environment or investing our efforts in giving back to the community. Our dedicated teams in Guam and on the U.S. mainland are here to support you. Call 588-4651 or visit apl.com.
Buying a house, apartment, or condo? Selling your home or property? Or maybe you're renting a house, apartment, or condo on Guam. Whatever your real estate needs are, you can count on the professionals at Horizon Properties to take care of you. Call Horizon Properties at 646-7616 or 777-7792. You can also visit them at horizonproperties.com or follow them on Facebook at Horizon Properties Guam. Maria Miller and the professionals at Horizon Properties. All you need to know in real estate.
So another big halftime show here on Tall Tales, the last halftime show of the week. Going to be tough on Jose and I. We're going to have to go back to prior episodes and just tune in on the halftime show once or twice tomorrow and on Sunday. So we won't be back until Monday, and it's a struggle for us, but we'll make it. Picking up again with Lieutenant Governor Josh Tenorio and his quasi-brother-in-law, Frankie Rosalind. And the lieutenant governor said, I did not have a role in the hiring. And if you know our family, I've never even had a conversation with Frankie about his case. The only things I ever talked to him about is expressing some sorrow for what's done to the family, and then relief when it was done. I didn't even know he'd applied for a job until he already had an interview. Now, going back to what Rory said he submitted an application, he qualified for the job, he interviewed, and then the selection was made.
Ooh.
Yeah, obviously there's a gap between the times of the interview and the selection. So Josh didn't have anything to do with it, but somehow Frankie thought it was important enough for Josh to know that he'd had an interview for the job. But I'm sure after that was over, Josh says, I don't want to hear about this anymore, went in, took a shower, and washed his ears out very, very thoroughly.
Did not have employee relations with that brother-in-law.
Yeah.
That's a really bad
with
thing.
that Mr. Rosalind, yeah. And then we go on to, at that point, I took myself for sure out of that. I took myself out of it. So maybe that's just a careless phraseology. I think what he means is I stayed out of it, not I took myself out of it.
Which means he was in it.
Yeah, if that's what he said, I took myself out of it, means he was in it. And that would be the Tall Tales take, but we won't do that today. We'll give him a break.
Give him a little bit.
Yeah, and but we're not going to give him the benefit of the doubt, that's for sure. And he's going to have to go and compete in the merit system and figure that out. Well, he's already competed in the merit system, and he's hired. So, when senators are talking about official misconduct, obviously he played by the rules. No, he didn't play by the rules, Josh. That's why he was convicted of official misconduct, because he didn't play by the rule. And there's no rule that barred him. Elected officials are under constant scrutiny, and rightfully so. So being that they hold the role of a public servant, but the scrutiny doesn't just stop at the official, according to the lieutenant governor. This is how he starts his sentence. To be honest with you. If you're ever coaching anybody as to how to present in public, Don't start your sentence. Well, to be honest with you, which is negatively pregnant with the admission that unless I say that, I'm lying through my teeth.
Which the reply is, it's about time.
Yeah. Oh, really? For the first time, huh? You're going to be honest with me? To be honest with you, I don't really want my family members or relatives to work, my personal family members or their relatives to work in the government because of this attention they get. But because of this attention they get. But I can't control that. And he got his job fair and square. Well, how do you know, Josh? How do you know he got it fair and square? You hope he got it fair and square. And then here's the kicker. He got his job, and he's trying to rebuild his life for his 7 children. Now, there's a sliding scale. The more children you have, the easier it is to get forgiveness for official misconduct. If you're childless, forget it. If you happen to have a dozen kids, you got it made.
That's the human shield argument.
Yeah. As for his take on those who have history of official misconduct being rehired to a different position within GovGuam, Tenorio shared this. People charged with official misconduct, I guess, will be the policy of the legislature, he guesses. If they want to pass that as an exclusion of hiring people from employment and it gets the public support, then it's the law, that law, and we abide by the law. That's a novel approach. We're supposed to try and recover people's lives. We don't throw people away when they make mistakes. Now, let's stop here and talk a minute about the word mistakes, okay? Mistakes. I think the governor pointed out that, we're all human? Yeah. And a mistake. Let's see, I made a mistake the other day. I put what I thought was sugar on my oatmeal, and it turned out to be salt. That was a mistake, okay? I played a really nasty trick on a man in a restaurant the other day. I exchanged the sugar on his table for salt, and he put a lot of salt on his oatmeal, and he almost got sick. That is not a mistake. When you're talking about mistake, you're not talking about that moral turpitude, that dishonest state of mind that I defined a little earlier. That's not a mistake. When you commit a crime, it's not a mistake. After you committed the crime, you may make a mistake of such a nature that you get caught. But committing a crime is not a mistake. So he said, when we don't throw away people when they make mistakes, and that's true. You know, if you're a government employee and you're driving a government vehicle and you're negligent when you're driving your vehicle and you get into a collision, okay, well, we'll give you another chance. But if you're a government employee and you get drunk and you're driving an official at midnight and you're in a collision and do $12,000 worth of damage, that is not a mistake, and that should not be forgiven. But, of course, Lieutenant Governor here wants to present this image of I don't know what image, but this is apparently he was trying to do. He's very forgiving. He's very humble. He wants to give people a chance. Well, give them a chance, but don't do it with my money. Don't do it at the commercial port that is our lifeline to the outside world. Let's not use that as a place to rehabilitate criminals who got caught up in a drug ring. And then he goes on to say, we don't throw people away when they make mistakes. Now, whether or not they should be entitled to apply for a government job, being a public servant, surely that is something that policymakers will have to determine. Boy, has he got a grasp for the obvious or what? He just nailed that, didn't he? Now Rosalind remains employed by the port. The probation office confirms that since entering the plea, Rosalind has completed all the terms and conditions. He was sentenced to 2-year probation that ends August 2021. So he's on probation when he gets on probation for the crime of official misconduct, and he's hired at another government agency. And it's, well, you know, we don't just throw people away when they make a mistake. So then the next chapter, today's paper, today's PDN. PDN, Senator investigating port hiring drug testing records. Senator Brown wants the hiring practices of Port Authority General Manager Rory Respicio investigated. Brown called for a closer look after the Port Authority of Guam Police Chief Doris Aguero. Brown said Aguero knew of an officer who tested positive for illegal drugs, resigned, and returned to work. Well, you know, isn't that okay? He resigned. Aguero said the officer didn't test positive for illegal drugs, and Brown was aware of the situation because Brown was the port's general manager when the drug test was done. Aguero called for Brown to apologize. Brown said Aguero released information about a port police officer who was possibly working in the port under the direction of Respicio. Aguero's statements make it clear that there are questionable hiring practices by Respicio, according to Brown. I am calling for a full investigation by the appropriate authorities into the port's hiring practices, including drug testing records, if, at the very least, to put an end to the spread of misinformation, Brown said. Brown on Tuesday introduced a bill that seeks to prohibit a person convicted of official misconduct from working for the government of Guam. So there you go. So Aguero has to come out, and you know the focus is on Frankie Rosalind, the focus is on Rory Respicio, and Doris Aguero now feels apparently duty bound to step outside the port, pick up a mud ball, and throw it at Joanne Brown. Although the issue of the drug test, the resignation, wasn't in play before. But, you know, if she's saying bad things about Rory, then, well, I got to say bad things about her. Obviously. That's what working at the port's all about, isn't it?
All about flinging.
And let's say that it happened the way she said. Let's say, and we just saw Rory's big crackdown on drugs in the paper a week ago, where 2 people were scheduled to take a drug test and they just left, and they're not on the port payroll anymore. So if they came back and applied again, applying the Josh Tenorio, Doris Aguero rule, they should be hired, right? Yeah. So if you're going to have a drug test coming up and you think you got a problem, resign, wait 30 days, come back and reapply, and you'll be fine. So I think Brown is really onto something here. She ran on an anti-corruption platform. None of this stuff looks good, as did Rory's administration from the very first day. His first meeting with the board of directors of the port, Oscar Calvo told him he should resign because of the things he said. First of all, he said, well, you know, I've had a talk with Champ Calvo about settling the YTK case. We could maybe take it into mediation. Who gave you the authority to talk to Champ Calvo? This board never authorized you to do that. Well, it was just really informal, just a phone. And it turns out later on that they'd even agreed where they were going to meet. This was all in the paper. With no authorization from the board whatsoever. Second thing, Rory says, you know, we've got some adverse actions here that are problematic. So I'm going to establish a task force to look into all these adverse actions to see that justice is being done. And he appointed, what was her name? Connie Shinohara to the task force, right? So they're going to look at the Port 7 to see if justice was being done there. In the meantime, right after that, Burry says, we've got to hire in-house counsel. Parenthesis, we got to get rid of Mike Phillips, because Mike Phillips is the guy turning the crank on the whole Port 7 thing. And the whole Port 7 litigation is so complicated that it would be really difficult for someone else to pick up the traces and take it forward. So the easy way to settle the Port 7 cases is to get rid of Mike Phillips. So we got to get rid of Mike Phillips. We need in-house counsel, so it'll save us some money. So Phillips' contract expired in about 6 months. They gave him notice, you're out of here. They hired a guy named, I think it's James or Charles McDonald to come in as in-house counsel. He lasted about 5 or 6 weeks as an employee, and he was gone. And they never replaced him. So the whole thing about getting rid of Phillips was just a pretext. They just didn't want Mike Phillips rattling around inside that port anymore. But then, of course, they brought in Warren Wolf, Luis Baza, former member of the Civil Service Commission, former director of the Civil Service Commission, who they assigned the Port 7 cases to, and as if by magic, he was able to settle them all. Now, we don't know how much that cost us or whether or not there was a mitigation of damages in the process, but he settled them all. This is Rory's first meeting with the board. He's going to settle the YTK case. He's going to do something about the Port 7 to find justice. And he wants to fire Mike Phillips. All of these things kind of lead to the same thing. And, of course, Phillips really screwed things up when he won the YTK case. So that's how he got started at the port. And he brought all the Port 7 people back. Now, once again, let's talk justice for a moment. And I went through that little story about justice for Albert Piolo. Albert Piolo got justice. You may not like the result, but, you know, the system worked the way it's supposed to work. The jury came back and said he's not guilty. That's what we call justice in our system. When it comes to personnel discipline, we have a very elaborate system where the deck is really stacked in favor of the employee. In order to fire an employee, a manager must give an employee a statement of the charges against him, give the employee 10 days to answer, make his final decision, and he's got to have this all wrapped up. It used to be 60, now it's 90 days. And if he goes over, if it takes longer than 60 back in those days, the termination is thrown out. The so-called 60-day rule, now the 90-day rule. So if the employee doesn't like management's decision, he appeals to the Civil Service Commission. The Civil Service Commission is historically so stacked in favor of the employee. Take for instance, Linda Uggan as an example. Linda Uggan was accused of some really serious stuff. And when it came time to vote, 3 people voted to sustain management, 1 voted to not sustain management. The Civil Service Commission interpretation is it takes 4 people for the Civil Service Commission to act. Therefore, Uggan was reinstated. Nonsensical. So if the employee loses there, then he has an appeal, what amounts to an appeal to the Superior Court, and from there he can go to the Supreme Court. That is justice. You know, you have procedural due process all the way along the line. You have, with the Civil Service Commission on, you have neutral fact finders. however those things come out is justice. And if they come out and the employee wins, another one, I may not like it, but it's justice, and I wouldn't want to change it. But when you jump in the middle and say this isn't justice because the results aren't right, it's taking too long, that is injustice. And that's how Rory started his career at the port. Now we got him hiring this Rosalind guy, Frankie Rosalind. And, well, you know, he went through the process and he was hired. I didn't have anything to do with it. Just the whole thing gives off a rather pungent odor, and it's not perfume. Okay, well, I suspect there will be more on this on Monday. Okay, let's go on to the next item on the card. Oh, wait a minute. I got some folks in the green room here. Pardon me, folks. I got a couple of callers waiting here in the green room. Let's see who I got here. I suspect it's another Joe. Yeah, another Joe. Another Joe and Frenchie. Frenchie's probably going to tell us about truffles. Another Joe, what can you tell us about truffles?
In regards to what?
Truffles.
Truffles?
Yeah.
Very, very, very lucrative. If you can find them, if you have, whether it be your pet pig, dog, or some critter that can sniff them out for you, you can sell them to a very good chef at a restaurant and maybe make hundreds, if not thousands of dollars.
Okay, well, good response, Another Joe. Did you want to tell us anything else today, or was that the reason you called?
Truffles?
Yeah.
No.
Well, you didn't call about truffles. That's what my mistake. Excuse me, Another.
I apologize. No, I called because regards to the Lieutenant Governor's comments, it would seem as though he isn't doing anything unusual. He's sticking up for his family and he's trying to get sympathy. That's to be expected of relatives on Guam.
Of lieutenant governors?
Well, he's saying he's trying to stay out of it, right? But at the same time, he's wording it to
he's trying to stay out of it, but at the same time, he's getting in it with both feet.
Yeah, right.
Staying out of it. Here's how you stay out of it. I'm not going to talk to you about that because Frankie Rosalind is my quasi-brother-in-law. I'm impartial on this. I'm not going to say anything. That's how you stay out of it. Not, well, we need to give people a break. That is not.
Good point.
That is not staying, and that's not. Well, it's not what we expect of corrections officers. It's not what we expect of lieutenant governors. If you want to be the lieutenant governor, you got to put your sympathy for your family somewhere else.
I can agree. I agree with you, Bob. Although I suspect that locals might get some traction with locals because he brought up some interesting ways of saying it, where he said that one of the points he touched on was something about. What I thought was interesting. He said that it wasn't appropriate or accurately characterized as being a mistake. It was, I guess, a crime.
Yeah.
So when he brought up, and I guess calling it a mistake would be to downplay it, and people who don't pay attention would say, "Oh, it was just a mistake. Maybe it's minor." But then he also said, "People who make mistakes, we don't throw them away." Now here in Guam, that's a play in words. We throw away people. Now on Guam, we know as kids growing up, it starts out as a joke, but right?
Okay.
Now, it becomes a joke unless you are the pagkamazuti, unless you are in fact the orphan, and if people keep bringing it up, it's a point of sensitivity, right? So, and the other thing that's I guess connected to it is I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right at the bottom, a boxe.
I beg your pardon?
Where someone is adopted, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I pronounced that right. So someone who has been basically, unfortunately, a pagkamaduti might have his life saved, or he has a future because someone took him in as a family member.
Poksai. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. There you go. So a very interesting play in words to Lieutenant Governor, and I don't think it was coincidental. I think he's pretty intelligent, and kind of slick. They do that. So anyway, yeah, I just kind of wanted to point that out, and I'll keep listening to you. Very interesting comment you made, and I'm curious what Frenchie wants to say. Thanks for your time with Bob. Happy New Year.
Good talking to you, another Joe. We're going to go to Frenchie right after the 7th inning stretch.
It takes all of us to protect Guam. Join the Guam Visitors Bureau in our social media campaign series aimed to protect our island and each other in this COVID-19 era. Participate in the Protect Guam movement by wearing your mask, showcasing Guam's heroes, staying active, and downloading the Guam COVID Alert app. Post and share your content with us. Use the hashtag ProtectGuam, and you could win $100. It's that simple. Check out visitguam.com for details. Let's reclaim our lives, our economy, and our tourism industry.
Everyone has a busy schedule these days, and sometimes we forget to schedule our routine dental checkup and cleaning. Don't neglect your dental health. Schedule one today with Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile team, conveniently located at the East West Business Center on Marine Drive, Upper Tumon. Call us today at 647-8702 or 3. Again, that's 647-8702 or 647-8703. We make smiles happen.
Seventh inning stretch, Wrigley Field in Chicago, Illinois. We found out the last time we talked to our friend Frenchie that in France, the baseball they play is a little different in the United States, because in France, when there's a riot, people will take baseball bats and bash the rioters' heads, right, Frenchie?
That is correct. Yeah, at least that's what's happening. That's why the riot police are a lot more violent in Europe than they are in the U.S. So, but anyhow, as far as truffles, yeah, you're right. Lots of hogs used to be used to find truffles. The problem with hogs is that they have a tendency to want to eat the truffle. So it takes a good timing for the handler to put their hand in front of the
would it be fair to say that they just hog all the goodies themselves?
They like to hog the goodies for themselves, yes. That's probably why they're mostly Democrats.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So nowadays they use hunting dogs, actually. And they're actually pointers that point at the truffle in the ground, and it gives time for people to dig it out. So, and like Joe rightly said, you can make a very good amount of money. Black truffle bring more money than the white ones, but there's basically two types. There is about 8 types of truffle, but there's 2 big families, the white one and the black ones, and they have varieties and things. So, but truffle can go as high as 1,500 euro a kilo. So yeah, that's quite a lot of money. That's $750 a pound. That's a lot of money. Anyhow, so I was watching our diverse government, like you talked about. It's by the way, the Rospicio thing. I think it's gonna be the gift that keeps on giving. But we can talk about it for days. Now we know basically all the people that the Biden administration wants to bring forward. Kamala Harris is going to have a counselor called Mike Danilan. National Security Advisor is Jack Sullivan, so far 2 Irishmen. Then you have his cabinet secretary is Ron Klein, who have seen him during the transition. He's an old Obama leftover and very far left. Secretary of Defense is an interesting guy, Lloyd Austin, retired general only 3 years ago, went to work for one of the big military industrial complex players, and then now they want to put him as Secretary of Defense. And he has, besides the fact that he's an African American, his military record is very tainted, and his last post as the head of the Southern Central Command, which sees most of the anti-terrorism center, is he didn't leave the best impression. I mean, the stories was that he was very tyrannical, very pushy, didn't always behave very well with women. So we'll see what comes out of that.
Well, he'll fit right in with Joe Biden then.
Well, yeah, I don't know if he smells people's hair, but we'll see. Attorney General is interesting. We'll see how, because he's going to have some hot potatoes to deal with. It's Merrick Garland, which Obama had nominated to be at SCOTUS. So interesting choice. Secretary of State is a very, very dangerous man, Anthony Blinken. He's a minority, a religious minority. Janet Yellen at the budget, we've seen her before when she was at the Federal Reserve, which is neither federal nor a reserve. It's basically a private bank, consortium of banks who loans money to the money machine of the government. Commerce Secretary is Gina Raimundo, so a Latina. We have Commerce Department Head of Negotiations is Catherine Tai. She is an Asian refugee, at least her parents were. So she's both Asian and a refugee. Director of the DNI, Department of National Intelligence, is Haverhill Haynes, who was working with a former Obama CIA director, and she is definitely a deep state snake. Ambassador to the UN, Linda Thomas Greenfield. She's an African-American scholar. We'll see what she does. Then we'll find one of the usual suspects, John Kerry, as a special czar for climate change. And then we have a very controversial guy, as Secretary of Health and Human and Social Services, Xavier Becerra, who was until recently the Attorney General of California. Is a member of La Raza. He's a very, very polarizing kind of person. White House Special Counsel for Science is Eric Lander. Don't know much about this man. Energy Secretary is Jennifer Granholm. Education Secretary is another Latino, Miguel Cardona, who is basically the opposite of his predecessor. I mean, he's a representative of the teachers union, basically. Labor Secretary, we have Martin Walsh. Now, that's an interesting guy. He was very nervous that he might not get the job because he's a white male in his 50s. He was, until recently, the mayor of Boston, and he's a big union advocate. And then, of course, at the EPA, you have Michael Regan. We'll come back to this guy later on. And at Transport Secretary, we have the GLBTQ representative, Mr. Pete Buttigieg. I just almost swallowed my tongue there. And so that's interesting. And then finally, at Director of DHS, we have Alejandro Mayorkas. I'll spend a few minutes on Mayorkas because he's an interesting character. He was he's been working during the Trump presidency. He's been working at one of the swamp largest attorney office. But before that, he was the undersecretary for DHS under Obama, and he has an interesting background. So he's a double minority, maybe a triple if you want to look at it. He was born in Cuba. He's Latino, but he's also Jewish. And his father was a Cuban Jew, but his mother was a Romanian Jew and a refugee. Because if you remember, just before the war and during the war, the Democrats that were in power refused to take Jewish refugees that were coming on boats. Actually, boats were sitting out on the shore of the United States. And so a lot of countries like Cuba, Mexico took a lot of Jewish refugees, and she's one of those. And she married Mayorkas' father, who was one of the largest steel factory in Cuba. So he was not some kind of a poor little guy. Actually, when Castro took over, he became a refugee himself as a child. They first went to Miami, but they didn't stay there very long, and he grew up in LA, according to his bio, before going to UC Berkeley and Loyola Law School, which is also in LA. It's the Jesuit school. I think Tim doesn't like them very much. We know that when they say LA, it's actually kind of a misnomer, because his father, who obviously took a lot of his money with him, moved them to Beverly Hills, which is far-fetched from East LA, right? Mm-hmm. And he went to Beverly Hills High School. And he got his JD from Loyola in 1985. Interesting guy. He also became, after he had several posts in the federal attorney's office in LA, and then he became the youngest U.S. attorney for the Central District of California in 1998, just 13 years after leaving law school, under the Clinton administration. And he got the job because he was recommended with your best friend, Senator Feinstein. Mm. All right. So it happens that his father and Senator Feinstein's husband, Mr. Bloom, and also Dick Swig were all members of the same synagogue. So one of those strange little things that the press never talks about. And he joined after leaving the Obama administration. So I talk the big law firm, Wilner, Cutler, Pickering, and Dale, which happens to have luminaries like Mueller and other people like that, other prominent politicians like the former Obama Secretary for Transportation, I think, who was a senator from Colorado for a while. So they have all those people there. He's been working. He was, as the assistant secretary for DHS, he is the one that put in place DACA, the very controversial plan that Trump had stopped and which right now Biden has put back on the rails. And for that, he received several awards from the Mexican-American Legal Defense Fund and also the Coalition for Human Immigrant Rights, which is a far-left group. And he has a few
I got a break coming up, Frenchie, but I got one question I got to ask you before I let you go, okay?
Yeah.
You've told us everyone who got posts in the new administration, but what about Willie Brown? What job is Willie Brown going to get?
Willie Brown, he can continue being Harris' sugar daddy, but last time I saw him, he has edge a lot, so interesting character. He has a tough time moving around now, and he's in his upper 80s, so he's not. I guess he has done his job helping Kamala around, but this is about it. But this guy has a couple of skeletons in his thing. In his closet. He was the one that pushed for a pardon for a famous drug dealer who happened to be a friend of his dad and gave a lot of money to other people. And he was involved in the EB-5 scandal in Las Vegas, where EB-5, for people that don't know, is an investor visa. If you put, I think it's $500,000 and you hire at least 3 Americans, you get fast track to get a green card. So,
gotta let you go, Frenchie. We got a break coming up.
Sorry.
Hope you can call back on Monday and give us the rest of that story, okay?
Yeah, I will. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Rolling sound, quiet, and action.
The Ray Gibson Show, starring Senator Mona Silva Tyron as the news anchor.
I'm Mona Silva Tyron, and I'll have your local news every morning. Life moves pretty fast, so stay with us to stay informed right here on The Point.
Also starring Jerry Roberts as the Better Business Training Guru.
Get out there and do something good today. Like listen to us Monday through Friday, 6 to 10 a.m., where we go extra for you.
Produced by the real Joe Cruz. And your warm and intelligent host, Ray Gibson.
It's the Gibson Stream of Consciousness. All the players and all the games with cameos and calls from the most interesting people like you. We'll see and hear you right here on your talk radio superstation. This is The Point.
The Ray Gibson Show was filmed before a live Facebook audience.
Okay, Google. Hey, Siri. Hi, Bixby.
Go ahead. I'm listening.
Open the Point app. Opening.
Live stream, on demand, swap stations, check out the visual radio. Get the free app available on the App Store and Google Play, or go to thepoint.gu.
Here we are in Louisville, Kentucky, Churchill Downs, heading down the home stretch here on Tall Tales. So if you ever had an overpowering desire to call Tall Tales, you'll never have a better opportunity than right now. Last item on the card for today is Governor Lulian Guerrero versus Judge Iriarte and Governor Lulian Guerrero versus Tom Pinehoff. Tom Pinehoff is the guy who's operating 2 taverns, Live House and Shady Lady, and he's been very vocal about his dissatisfaction with the governor shutting down bars and opening just about every other business on the island, and he claims to be in rather serious economic distress because he can't reopen, and there doesn't seem to be any reopening day in sight. So he organized some other bar owners and brought suit against the governor, alleging some constitutional theories as to why the governor should be forbidden from shutting down the bars. And he's had a setback. In our system here, we have a district court, the District Court of Guam, which is a federal court. The judge of the district court is Chief Judge Francis Tydenko Gatewood. And then we have a magistrate whose name is Michael Berdallo. And certain cases or certain kinds of cases go before the magistrate first. The magistrate then hears the case, writes a draft decision, submits it to council, and gives them the opportunity to weigh in on it, and then forwards that decision to the chief judge, who can adopt it, modify it, reject it, whatever. And the magistrate judge has ruled against Tom Pinehoff. This is a story that ran in today's Post. District Court of Guam Magistrate Michael Berdallo has recommended the dismissal of a lawsuit filed by a local bar owner which challenged the government's Wuhan virus emergency orders on grounds that they violated his constitutional rights. The parties have 14 days to file objections to Berdalio's recommendation, according to the Office of the Attorney General. The District Court Chief Judge will make the final decision on the case. Thomas Peinhoff, who operates Live House and the Shady Lady, filed suit in September asking the federal court to nullify the governor's executive orders that forbade certain businesses from opening during the pandemic. The Office of the Attorney General sought dismissal. The parties argued their cases before Berdalio on December 8. The magistrate judge addressed 4 counts in his recommendation, which were plaintiffs' claims related to the taking of property without compensation. That's what we would call condemnation or eminent domain. A violation of substantive due process, lack of procedural due process, and violation of equal protection. On the first count, Berdalio stated that despite interfering with his investment-backed expectations, Peinhoff failed to adequately show the economic impact resulting from government regulations and the character of the government's action aimed at slowing the spread of Wuhan virus appeared to favor dismissal. On the second count, regarding the substantive due process issue, Berdalio stated that exhibits attached to the plaintiff's complaint did not contain any factual allegations showing that the defendants acted with deliberate indifference or purpose to harm. Instead, the exhibits attached to the complaint indicate that the defendants' actions were taken to safeguard public health and contain the virus's spread. That's against the governor and the director of public health and social services in their individual, not official capacities. In terms of due process, Berdalio stated that the plaintiff failed to assert a protectable liberty or property interest, but even if he did, there is no doubt that the Wuhan virus pandemic is an unprecedented emergency. The Supreme Court has determined that summary action with the deprivation of property to protect public health being one of the oldest examples may be justified in emergency situations, according to Berdalio. And that's the famous old case, Jacobson versus Massachusetts, which was decided in 1905 during a smallpox epidemic, where Boston said everybody has to take a smallpox vaccination. If you don't, we're going to fine you $5. Mr. Jacobson said, I don't need no stinking vaccination. He was tried, found guilty, fined $5, which in 1905 was, was money. It's probably 2 days' wages. So he took his case to the Supreme Court, and that case held that in the case of an emergency such as this, that type of regulation was, although stepping on the Constitution, permissible. And that case is still with us today. It's gone through some iterations and some different standards of scrutiny, but it's still pretty good law. In terms of procedural due process, Berdalio stated that the plaintiff failed to assert a protectable liberty interest. I'm sorry, I already read that. Lastly, with the equal protection claim, Berdalio stated that despite plaintiff's allegations, a review of the complaint and exhibits do not establish his business is similarly situated to businesses that sell essential or necessary items, and neither has he shown that the classification of essential and unessential were made on any basis other than the risk to public health. Berdalio recommended that the district court chief judge dismiss with leave to amend counts 1 through 4 and to dismiss with prejudice a request for monetary damages against the governor and the director of public health in their, it says official capacity, but it's obviously their personal capacity. While the government is making headway in federal court, it continues to press on with challenges in local court. Now, next, the article talks about the declaratory judgment, but I notice I've got a caller waiting in the green room, so I think I'll stop. It's another Joe. I'll let another Joe in one more time, and then I'll proceed on with the governor's declaratory judgment suit. Go ahead, another Joe.
Think about, I just remembered, I want to warn all the Tall Tale Nation that there are reports of a caravan approaching the southern border between the U.S. and the United States and Mexico, coming from South or Central America.
You know, some people will do anything for the opportunity to listen to tall tales, another Joe.
So I think your nation, your Tall Nation, Bob, needs to pay attention to this and see what the Democrat leadership are going to do to protect us. Because you think we have limited resources now? Just wait until possibly thousands of people across the board, and they have to be accommodated.
Well, I got some inside dope from Washington, and that is that Joe Biden canceled the order for red carpets. And he said just plain old generic carpets are going to be good enough for those people when they cross the border.
There you go. And then, of course, the possibility of the old and newer strains of Wuhan corona virus that they might be possibly bringing from whoever they're in contact with. So anyway, that's pretty much what I wanted to say about. Thank you, and Happy New Year. I'll keep listening.
All right, another Joe. That guy just loves the Ferris wheel. Okay, so going on to the rest of this article, the governor's lawyers, let's see. While the governor is making headway in federal court, it continues to press on with challenge in local court. Late December 2020, facing challenges and losses at the Superior Court related to the governor's quarantine mandate, Governor Lulian Guerrero filed a request for declaratory judgment at the Supreme Court of Guam, asking it to recognize the government's authority to impose quarantine measures and determine the parameters of the quarantine. I'm not going to have time to go through this, but I will go back and remind you of some of the things that happened. The government continued to flub before Judge Uriarte, who had been appointed to handle all of the quarantine cases, and she was ably assisted by lawyers from the Public Defender Service Corporation, who were brought in to handle anyone who was quarantined and didn't have counsel. And Judge Uriarte and the governor kept losing and losing and losing. So rather than take an appeal or go to the Supreme Court for a writ, which would have, if she had, it would be over by now, the governor invoked our absolutely silly declaratory judgment procedure, which I've ranted about on many occasions. We're the only place in the country that has it. It's useless, and that's about all the time I've got for today. I won't be back for 70 straight hours. It's going to be tough on Jose and I. No tall tales for 70 hours. We've done it before. We'll make it again. We'll see you 1600 on Monday.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Getting a jump start on the pandemic. I'm Carmen Roberts, Fox News.
We'll move heaven and earth to get more people vaccinated for free and create more places for them to get vaccinated.
On his first full day in office, President Biden unveils his plan to fight the pandemic.
President Biden's national vaccination plan sets a goal of administering 100 million shots in 100 days and sets up FEMA-run vaccination centers. The president also signed 10 executive orders, including one requiring face coverings in airports, trains, and public transit.
The masks have become a partisan issue, unfortunately, but it's a patriotic act.
The administration has proposed to Congress a nearly $2 trillion economic relief package.
Fox's Jared Halpern. A familiar name returns to the White House to help in the fight as the president's chief medical advisor. Dr. Tony Fauci warning even as the number of COVID cases goes down, deaths may keep rising.
When you have cases and then a couple of weeks later you see it represented in hospitalizations, intensive care, and then a couple of weeks later in deaths.
Fauci, speaking at a White House briefing, says reports the Trump administration did not have a vaccination plan are false. A Japanese government spokesman says there's no truth to our report about the possible cancellation of the Tokyo Summer Olympics. The pandemic already delayed the 2020 Olympics, and officials hope with a successful rollout of COVID vaccines, the games will go on. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell wants the Senate to postpone the impeachment trial of former President Trump until mid-February. He says that would give the Trump legal team time to prepare. And the NASDAQ and S&P 500 closed at record highs while the Dow fell 12 points. America's listening to Fox News.
From the Fox News Podcasts Network, stay on top of the latest news and information from Fox News. Listen and download